TomoNews presents China versus Hong Kong.
You're Chinese. I'll say it again. Chinese.
Mainland Chinese tourists throw hissy fit in Hong Kong hotel. Don't touch me! Back off! Making a big fuss won't help anything! Calm down! A group of more than 24 mainland Chinese tourists thrust police and staff at a hotel in Hong Kong's bustling Tsim Sha Tsui neighborhood into their personal hell on Sunday. We don't want to live here. We want our money back.
5 people to a room? Do you expect us to sleep on the floor? You've got to be kidding me.
I'm here to help you. Don't speak to me in that tone. Before arriving in Hong Kong, the group of 29 visiting from the southeastern province of Fujian had tried to book a total of 7 rooms meant to accommodate 24 people for just a single night, according to authorities. The expired credit card they had used to book the $1,000 expense, however, was declined. Apparently knowing full well they didn't have a proper reservation ahead of their departure, the group nonetheless decided to air their grief with hotel staff. The extremely loud and incredibly close, high-pitched frequency no doubt had lasting effects on the poor hotel manager's eardrums, because he eventually agreed to offer, on extremely short notice, 4 rooms that could accommodate the large group for US $950. And if you have to ask, here's the breakdown. A family room with 7 bunk beds for a whopping total of 14 people. 2 rooms for half dozen people each, with only 2 double beds in each room, meaning 4 people will have to doze off on the hotel room floor. And finally, a likely much more comfortable triple room for 3 of the tourists. Instead of getting accustomed to their no doubt less than snug arrangements, as soon as they checked in, the army of tourists marched straight to Disneyland. When they came back to the hotel at around 7 p.m., they began, unsurprisingly, to kick up a bit of a fuss. If they don't have any rooms available, they shouldn't take our money. This time complaining that the hotel had put men and women in the same room. How dare them? And that they didn't like bunk beds and that they didn't want to, under any circumstance, sleep on the ground.
Refund! Give us back our money!
Stand back! Stand back! You could take legal actions against the hotel, but we're not authorized to give you a refund. One of the feisty sightseers next cleverly suggested to her fellow travelers that they should break the law and try to get a free night stay at a police station. But of course, that idea was quickly vetoed. The complaints lasted an agonizing 7 hours, and finally ended at around 2 p.m. after the hotel agreed to pay for the group to stay at a neighboring hotel.
Woman from China makes a big stink on the subway. Last week on Hong Kong's MTR subway system, a 40-year-old woman from China made a big stink. But no, that's not what you're thinking. The woman boarded the subway and, seeing as there were no seats available, yelled and scolded and verbally abused all the passengers on board until someone fled the cacophony of noise and she got a seat. After she was comfortably seated, the woman took off her shoe and began to vigorously scratch the sole of her foot. The smell of unwashed feet was enough to convince several other people to flee to neighboring carriages. It was a surprise no one passed out from the stench. But I suppose we should applaud her for not taking a dump on the subway, which has happened more often than you would think. There has been more than one yellow river flowing through subway cars in the past. Anti-Chinese tourist protesters injured in scuffles with Hong Kong police. In recent years, Chinese and Americans have competed for the prize of which country has the loudest and most obnoxious tourists. But that may all be a question of relative distance from each country. Last year, Hong Kong saw nearly 50 million tourists from China. That's more than 7 times the population of Hong Kong itself. The tourists from China bring their loud voices, bad manners, bad habits, and money with them. The Hong Kongers call them locusts because of their voracious appetite for shopping and tendency to descend on shopping areas or supermarkets in swarms. It's why, in Yuanlong, more than 400 protesters turned out against Chinese shoppers, calling for the eradication of the Communist Party and the revocation of multiple entry visas, allowing Chinese nationals to enter Hong Kong. Yuanlong is a border town in Hong Kong's new territories, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from mainland China. Many so-called businessmen buy goods in Hong Kong and then move them over the border to resell for a profit in China. It's known as parallel trading. Unfortunately, this also drives up costs and rents as the Chinese tourists inflate the market. The tourists also litter the streets wherever they go, creating piles of trash and garbage. It's why some Hong Kong businesses have a love-hate relationship with Chinese tourists. Police turned out against the 400 protesters using batons and pepper spray. At the end of the day, police arrested 33 individuals between the ages of 13 and 74.
Patriotic Chinese call those shopping in Hong Kong traitors.
Love the motherland, shop domestically.
A group of Chinese patriots occupied the tourist-heavy Causeway Bay outside of Hong Kong's Sogo department store today. The demonstrators wore hats with a red star and armband and were armed with Mao's Little Red Book and the Chinese flag. They appeared to be from mainland China and called mainland tourists who were there to shop traitors. Police was summoned to the scene to maintain order. Over 100 people surrounded the protesters, watching them wave their flags and sing Chinese Communist Party songs. One Hong Kong resident, surnamed Lee, engaged in a verbal fight with the demonstrators. The occupation ended when demonstrators were asked to leave by the police.
China drops the DDoS on Occupy Central. Pro-China forces have resorted to cyber attacks in their effort to thwart democracy and free speech in Hong Kong. On Wednesday, hackers launched denial-of-service attacks against websites operated by Apple Daily, which supports universal suffrage. This follows an attack on a website that is conducting a non-binding poll on democratic reforms. Basic law in Hong Kong promises voters the right to choose their leader via universal suffrage. But China wants to limit this right by deciding who may run in elections, meaning only the loyal can run for office. Many Hong Kongers see this as a sham democracy. The right to nominate candidates should rest with the people.
Next Media Chairman Jimmy Lai takes a stance against Hong Kong's pro-Beijing camp. Hong Kong news outlets recently reported on Next Media Chairman Jimmy Lai's political donations to the pan-democracy camp. An email from somebody claiming to be a Next Media stockholder revealed Lai had made the donations via Mark Simon, the commercial director at Next Media Animation. Reporters at Hong Kong Apple Daily, a publication owned by Lai, wondered why they were left off the mailing list. During an Apple Daily radio show interview, Lai said that his company's server, as well as Simon's computer, were hacked. He stressed that he devoted what he could to push for Hong Kong's development for the benefit of society. He said the donations did not come from the US or anyone else. Every penny came from his own pocket. Apple Daily reporters joked with him about when they were due for a raise. Lai also encouraged other entrepreneurs to support pan-democrats to further Hong Kong's push for democracy. Lai has donated 40 million Hong Kong dollars, or about 5.2 million US, to the pan-democracy camp over the past 2 years. On the other hand, the pro-Beijing camp, the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong, was able to raise 68 million Hong Kong dollars, or 8.8 US, in one night of fundraising in April. Leaders of the pan-democratic camp criticized the attempts to denounce Lai's efforts, saying this kind of white terror was pointless. Staffers at Hong Kong Apple Daily think the attack on Lai is simply a way to divert attention away from Beijing's influence on Hong Kong politics.
China breaks democracy promise to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is governed by its constitution, the Basic Law. In 1990, China agreed to the Basic Law and its promises, such as democracy. Apparently, however, there was some fine print in the Basic Law that no one noticed, because China has now gone back on those promises. On Sunday, the National People's Congress approved a sham democracy plan for Hong Kong. The plan allows voters to cast ballots for chief executive in 2017 for the first time ever. But a pro-Beijing committee will pre-select the candidates. Pro-democracy advocates say voters should be able to nominate their own candidates. But Beijing fears this will lead to candidates who will run on policies that favor the people and challenge the city's economic oligarchs who have risen on the back of beneficial government land policies. The fake democracy China proposes is no better than the undemocratic system Hong Kong has now. Can you really blame Hong Kongers for being so angry?
China attempts to intimidate Catholic Diocese of Hong Kong as democratic crackdown continues. The Chinese government's battle to crush Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement has extended to a new front. The Vatican's representative in Hong Kong was supposed to hold a press conference last month to voice the church's support for genuine universal suffrage, or the right for Hong Kong citizens to directly elect the city's top political leader. However, Speaker Michael Young-Ming Chung, the current auxiliary bishop of Hong Kong, didn't show up, which has led people to suspect that Beijing may have offered to establish diplomatic relations between China and Vatican City in a dirty deal to make the diocese stay silent on the democracy issue. If the diocese can be manipulated into silence, does this mean that we have to consider the relationship between China and the Vatican every time we touch on controversial issues and thus sacrifice Hong Kong's rights? Some Catholics are worried such an underhanded agreement could be just another bad check that China has no intention of honoring, as it does all it can to undermine support for Hong Kong's democratic future. Hong Kong students drum up pro-democracy protest. Thousands of students in Hong Kong started a week-long strike to defend democracy and fight for universal suffrage. More than 13,000 students from 25 universities wearing white tops turned out at the Chinese University of Hong Kong on the second day of the protest, demanding the right to nominate candidates in the election of the city's next chief executive in 2017, and to voice their hostility to Beijing's decree that all candidates be pre-screened by a pro-Beijing nominating committee. Students from the sit-down strike told reporters that they need to engage in social activism during this critical time in Hong Kong's history, and that it was time for them to take action. Facing doubts over how effective the strike will be, one of the students expressed the hope that the strike will play an initial role and might lead to a more broad-based public campaign of resistance. She said, "Those in power might not respond to students' actions, but the protest is inevitable." Responding to the voices that dismiss the young people as merely immature students who are acting recklessly, the student said she believes each of them has thought critically about the campaign before they took part and are aware of what they had to sacrifice. The event organizer and Hong Kong's largest student organization, the Hong Kong Federation of Students, demanded that the Beijing government drop the electoral policy and called for the resignation of the current Beijing-appointed chief executive, Leung Chun-ying. The demonstration extended to the third day today at Tamar Park, right across from the chief executive's office, where the Federation of Students gave an ultimatum to the chief executive that he engage in direct dialogue or they will take further action.
Hong Kong University media ethics lecturer attacked by mainlander during class. Cliff Buttle is a senior editor at Hong Kong's South China Morning Post newspaper and an honorary lecturer at Hong Kong University. As Mr. Buttle was speaking on media law and ethics on Monday, a Mandarin-speaking man interrupted the class. Speaking in Mandarin, the man screamed, "It's been 17 years since Hong Kong returned to China. Teaching should be in Chinese." He then ran to the front of the class and assaulted Buttle, kicking him in the chest. After the assault, the man attempted to flee but was blocked by students. Student Eden Yu caught the moment on camera. University security officers detained the man and confirmed he is not a student at HKU. Security staff said the attacker claimed to be a 26-year-old student from Beijing's Tsinghua University. Cliff Buttle later told the media he was grateful to the students who helped him and detained the attacker and said he was shocked and saddened by the incident. Police arrested the man and are investigating him for assault. Hong Kong freedom lovers alarmed at growing government requests for internet data. Despite promises of non-interference, Beijing has cast a large shadow over Hong Kong since it returned to the loving embrace of the motherland in 1997. Less noticed, however, is China's slow, boa constrictor-like strangling of Hong Kong's internet freedom. And one rather famous company that once promised to do no evil may not be living up to its principles. China is famous for its supercharged censorship that has been highly successful in bullying internet companies into obeying their edicts if they want to operate in China. But under the one country, two systems formula, Hong Kong was guaranteed the right to certain freedoms. As with every other Beijing promise, however, it seems these guarantees come with certain socialist characteristics. A recent report claims in the first 6 months of the year, Hong Kong authorities made some 370 information requests to Google, half the number from Japan and second only to authoritarian Singapore. Don't get us wrong, we fully support internet companies cooperating with governments to track down creeps or criminals, but the fact that data requests have increased significantly couldn't have anything to do with mounting protests and dissatisfaction with Beijing's rule, could it? A word to the wise, Hong Kong's people have given you their trust, Google. Don't betray it by tripping down that slippery slope. Hong Kong booksellers' rendition back to China shows freedom is under threat, student activist says.
I'm Agnes Chow, a member from Scholarism, a students' activist organization in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong student activist Angus Chow posted this video on her Facebook page to raise awareness of the mysterious disappearance of Hong Kong bookseller Li Bo, who went missing on December 30th. Li is a major shareholder of Causeway Bay Books. He was last seen leaving a book warehouse in Chai Wan on Hong Kong Island alone with a bag of books. Li's home return permit, the entry permit to mainland China for Hong Kong residents, was left at home, but he called his wife on the night of his disappearance from Shenzhen, a mainland Chinese city just across the border from Hong Kong. Hong Kong's immigration department has no record of Li leaving the territory. Some suspect he was taken from Hong Kong and secretly smuggled across the border. Li is in fact the fifth person linked to the bookstore that has gone missing.
We feel that Hong Kong is not Hong Kong anymore. It is named as Hong Kong only. The most worrying thing finally happened.
Chow's message has been shared more than 12,000 times on Facebook and gained more than 21,000 likes. Many netizens have expressed their support. The Central News Agency published a handwritten letter allegedly written by Li Bo last night, which was faxed to his colleagues at the bookstore, that claims he needs to handle an issue that cannot be known by outsiders. Consequently, Li's wife withdrew her request for police help. The case sparked a protest in the territory on Sunday where many pro-democracy demonstrators demanded a thorough investigation into the disappearance of the booksellers. Thailand slams the door on Hong Kong democracy campaigner. Hong Kong pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong was refused entry into Thailand this week after the country caved into pressure from China. Thailand was dumb enough to send more than 10 police officers to detain Wong when he landed at Sumarmi Airport on Tuesday. Wong said he was interrogated, then forced to spend almost 12 hours inside a cell at the airport. The deputy commander of the airport immigration office confirmed that China was lame enough to send a request for the activist's entry to be denied. Wong was originally scheduled to give a talk on political activism at Chulalongkorn University. When is China going to realize that by bullying Wong, they're only bringing more attention to the kid, and at the same time showing how petty they are? Oh, what a global superpower China has become! Lawmakers may lose council seats after standing up for Hong Kong. Two newly elected lawmakers who support Hong Kong independence have been repeatedly blocked from taking their oaths in the Legislative Council. after they hilariously misread the clause that requires counselors to pledge allegiance to China. Now, China and the pro-Beijingers are all butthurt and want to stop Yao Wai-ching and Sixtus Leung from joining LegCo. CY Leung even launched a judicial review to see if the Youngspiration pair is allowed to retake their oaths. So much for separation of powers. On top of all that drama, China's biggest, baddest rubber stamp body, the National People's Congress Standing Committee, is going to intervene directly by issuing an interpretation of Hong Kong's basic law to disqualify the legislators permanently. And now with China butting its nose into the LegCo mess, it'll clearly just make Hong Kongers even angrier. If CY had any brains, he'd just let Yao and Sixtus take their seats and get on with it. Looks like Beijing could be looking at Occupy Central 2.0.
Hong Kong protests brainwashing. Hong Kong's government is attempting to introduce Chinese national education. The government-funded book, The China Model, portrays China's single-party communist state in a positive light. It also skips over major history points, such as the Tiananmen Square crackdown. Parents, teachers, and students in Hong Kong have taken to the streets to protest what they say is brainwashing. Is Hong Kong slowly losing its freedom under Chinese rule?